Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. You can keep this conversation going over on my Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Please like, share and subscribe, and welcome to episode 16 of Smallville, the saviour of Superman. A lot of people are triggered by that title of these videos. Smallville didn't save Superman. Superman didn't need saving. I think I called it that, and when I had my Facebook notes and I started doing Smallville, the saviour of Superman back then. Unfortunately, those notes have gone there because I think I wrote some great stuff, even if I say so myself. But Smallville is the saviour of Superman because Superman was losing popularity. He wasn't the popular icon he should have been, and I mean, even today in comics, he's very popular. But in terms of live action, where is he? We haven't seen him since Justice League. We know what a mess that was. So it's very prevalent. In fact, Superman needs saving again. So I decided to call, when I was doing my notes, Smallville, the saviour of Superman, because I believed Smallville saved Superman in every way. Because what Smallville did was they took him out of the suit and they basically gave us the raw character. They said, he's not wearing the costume. He has got powers. This is the story of how he becomes that character. And it was fleshed out so beautifully. So what they said was, right, we are going to take him out of the costume. We are going to show you who Superman actually is. We're going to show you his world. We're going to show you who he was before he becomes Superman. And that was beautifully transcendent because that's a long word and I didn't even say it properly. But basically, it's a very compelling way of telling a Superman story. And I think people say to me, well, Mick, what do you think the secret of Superman of Smallville's success is? Well, I think the secret of Smallville's success, I swear I'm going to sneeze in a minute. If I do, please don't laugh. But I think the secret of Smallville's success is that, you see, back then, the WB made a lot of teen-based shows for young people. And they were all pretty similar. You had the younger characters, the attractive younger characters. Then you'd have a character like Dan from One Tree Hill or Lionel Luthor from Smallville, who normally were the most interesting characters in the show. But it's interesting in Smallville because normally the Lex Luthor type of character isn't particularly that interesting. But because it was Lex Luthor, because we knew what they were going to become, because kind of in One Tree Hill, if you like, if we compare both shows, because I think One Tree Hill and Smallville are very comparable. Yes, I know that Smallville is really a superhero show about an alien with superpowers growing up in the world and how he finding out what he will become. But I think with Lucas Scott as well and his brothers, whose name I forgot, but you had that friendship, didn't you? Because they were kind of half brothers, I think. And it was a very interesting thing. So you've kind of got Lucas, and you've got this other guy, and the other guy's a bit of a douche when we first meet him, but actually he's not going to become a villain. He becomes more and more pure-hearted as the series gets on. Now, with the Clark and Lex friendship, it's really astonishing and it captures people's imagination because you think, well, we never knew of Clark and Lex Luthor being friends. And most people think that never happened, and I explained that before in the 1960s Superboy comic. In fact, Superboy and Lex do meet, and they do have a little friendship, and then Lex's jealousy makes him bitter and twisted towards Clark, towards Superboy, and he tries to do some experiment which makes him go bald, and of course he blames Superboy for that as well. But Smallville did something very intelligent because by telling the story of how Clark Kent becomes Superman and how Lex Luthor becomes that megalomaniac we all know and love, you're telling a very, very interesting story, but you're also doing it in episodic form every week. So if you say you're watching season 1 and you haven't seen the other seasons, like I was originally when the show first aired, you didn't really know how they were going to do this, when they were going to do this. You didn't know when Lex was going to become who he is. But it's not a sudden change. What Smallville done really intelligently, and credit to Alan Mars for this, the journey of Lex Luthor was very sporadic, very slow. It's a slow burn. But what they do, they give you little touches, like in Hourglass, when Cassandra sees Lex's future of becoming a president of the nuclear war, him standing there, you know, with blood on his gloves and stuff like that. And then he doesn't see that future, but that future that Cassandra sees kills her. That's Lex Luthor's first kill without him actually knowing it. It's not that he's done it at that time, that he's bad at that time, but his future has killed her. That's amazing. That's so epic, so awesome, and so compelling. I remember watching Hourglass for the first time and me being utterly shocked by the ending of that episode. Seeing Lex Luthor's presence, seeing what he'll become, that was magical, because they couldn't show us him in that present day being like that, because, as I say, it's a very slow story, but it's an interesting one. So seeing that, and then the nurse going, and then Clark saying to the nurse, she saw it, and the nurse goes, saw what? Her death, because she tells Clark someone close to him is going to die. And then Clark's trying to protect even Lex. Lex is driving too fast in his Porsche. He's telling Lex to go slower. And then once Lex hears about Cassandra, he wants to find out some information about Clark, because Lex believes in the supernatural. Lex believes that she can tell the future. So you can tell already there that although Lex looks up to Clark, and I think that's honest, I think Lex does see Clark as a friend, but Lex has never had a real friend before, so he doesn't really know how to treat them. And he's not betraying Clark by trying to find out information about him from Cassandra. He wants to know more about him because he is Lex Luthor. He does live in a paranoid world. He's always had to watch his back from his father, from the people in Metropolis. So it's understandable that he wanted to know more about Clark, but this is what makes it a very intelligent story. Because as I say, because it's about Lex, because it's about that relationship with Clark, that friendship was very important to that show's success, and it really, really worked. There's another episode where basically these two meteor freaks can convince you to do whatever they want you to do, and Lex is convinced to kind of kill Clark, or whatever it is, to kill a witness that Clark's protecting, or whatever it is, right? That's a really good episode, by the way, because that is the episode, and I spoke about this before, when Clark and Lex go, because it's about these two friends with the similar meteor ability of convincing people to do what they want, and they were salesmen, crap salesmen, and then they fell out because one wanted to use his power to become a wealthy businessman, but he didn't care who he hurt, and the other guy is saying, no, this is wrong, so they split up, right? And he tells the arsehole guy to keep away from Smallville. So in the end of the episode, Clark says to Lex, I wonder if that will ever happen to us. And Lex says the iconic dialogue, trust me, Clark, our friendship will be the stuff of legend. And their backs are towards us, and they're standing there looking out of Clark's barn. It's a beautiful scene, very artistically shot, but you know the relevance of that. I don't think Smallville really has a secret to its success. I think Smallville was about very different things. It really never, I think apart from Pete, all the other characters were treated very, very well in terms of making sure they were important to the audience. Chloe's important, Lana's important, and eventually Lois is very important, but she's Lois, of course she is, but if she's a crap Lois, it isn't going to work, is it? But, she's one of the best Lois Lanes, there's no question about that. I think when you look at Smallville and you look at that 10-year journey, it's a proper journey. And Smallville, as I've said before, earns everything it does. So it's really difficult when a lot of people keep on asking me, you guys keep on asking me, what's the secret of the show's success? I think it's so many different things. I think the way shows were made back then, and shows like One Tree Hill and shows like Buffy, because I think Smallville takes a lot of inspiration from Buffy. It absolutely does. And there's nothing wrong with that. Great things inspire great things. Smallville's a very different show, but it's certainly inspired by Buffy. There's no question about that. I think back then, shows like Smallville and Buffy and Angel and One Tree Hill to a lesser extent, which I really enjoyed at the time, and I wasn't even a teenager. I think back then it wasn't about political commentary. It wasn't about, it was about entertaining an audience. It was about doing something special. Smallville certainly wanted to do something special. It wanted to tell that pre-Superman story. I never really felt that they used Superman to get butts on seats, which they probably did to a point. But it really did feel like a Superman TV show. It really felt that they were giving us a character-driven journey about how Clark Kent becomes Superman and how Lex Luthor will become, as I say, the megalomaniac we know and love. In fact, we talk about the Joker movie, we talk about that movie being a case study. Well, the story of Lex Luthor, the way Rosenbaum plays it and the way Alan Miles conceived it, that's what it is. It's a case study on Lex Luthor. So really, I would imagine, and maybe Todd Phillips wouldn't say this, but I think that basically the Joker movie is inspired by Lex Luthor's story. People say you should do a Lex Luthor kind of DC Black movie. In a way, it's already been done on Smallville. I wouldn't mind seeing that done again. But do you know what? Smallville has so many achievements. And when you talk about the secret of the show's success, the biggest secret to its success is its characters.